continued to argue.
I'm done.
Miss Sylvia, get the duct tape.
I'll sit here and listen to the lies.
You know what? She's got a right to talk to the court after you
And
murdered
she can talk.
a relative of hers. And you're going to shut your...
You're going to shut your mouth, or I'm going to have some duct tape put on you. That is not a line from a dark comedy. That is a real judge in a real courtroom addressing a real defendant who had just been convicted of first-degree murder. And what happened next is why we are here. This is the sentencing hearing of Kamiya Gamut, a 30-year-old woman from Jackson, Mississippi, who stood before Judge John McBain in 2013, facing the rest of her life in prison. But before this hearing was over, duct tape would be threatened, a victim's family member would be silenced, and the judge would say something so brutal, so final, that it echoed through every corner of the legal community. To understand how we got to that explosive ending, we need to go back to where it all began. In May of 2013, police in Jackson responded to a home on Lansing Avenue. Inside, they found the body of 48-year-old Marcel Hill. What the autopsy revealed was not a crime of passion in the heat of a moment. It was sustained, methodical, and absolutely brutal. Marcel Hill had been stabbed no fewer than 12 times. And then, as if that were not enough, someone had taken an iron pan and caved in the front of his skull. The person charged with that murder was Marcel's own girlfriend, Kamiya Gamut. She claimed it was self-defense. She said she loved him. She insisted she had no choice. But the evidence told a different story. The jury heard testimony. They saw the forensic reports. They studied the crime scene photographs. And when the trial ended, they returned a verdict of guilty on one count of first-degree murder. The case now moved to sentencing, and that is where the real drama begins. Gamut appeared before Judge John McBain, a seasoned jurist who had presided over the trial and who had already seen everything this defendant had to offer. The courtroom was tense. Marcel Hill's family was present, including his aunt, Diana Banks Joyner, who would soon become a central figure in what unfolded. Judge McBain opened the sentencing by doing something that judges always do, but that rarely produces genuine insight. He gave the defendant a chance to speak. This is called the right of allocution. In plain English, it is the moment before sentencing when a convicted person can say anything they want to the court without being questioned. It is their one unfiltered opportunity to show remorse, to apologise, to ask for mercy, or to simply stay silent. What Gamut chose to do with that opportunity tells you everything you need to know about what happened next. She did not apologise. She did not express regret. She did not acknowledge the life she had taken. Instead, she said this.
Attempted to walk away. When brought back, Rodriguez once again demanded to be released from prison and continued threatening the judge.
What do you want? What's your pleasure? What do you want from me? Where is Sabrina? What the is she?
Finding prosecutor.
What's her phone number? If you don't let me out of here, I'm gonna kill you.
Cool as a cucumber, Judge
I just
Butch
want to say that I stick by the truth, which is that I did react in self-defense. I did love Marcel. Basically, at trial, the way I was portrayed, mostly everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted of the lies. Notice what just happened there. A woman convicted by a jury of her peers after a full trial, with evidence, with witnesses, with cross-examination, stood up and said the system got it wrong. She was the real victim. The jury had been fooled. The evidence was misleading. She loved him. It was self-defense. 12 stab wounds and a caved-in skull, and she wanted the judge to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Judge McBain was not impressed, and this is where the transcript reveals something remarkable about how judges think. He did not argue with her. He did not debate her version of events. He asked one question, and that question was a trap. Anything you want to tell the court about the 12 stab wounds that you did in self-defense? That is not a question seeking information. That is a rhetorical demolition. He is asking her to explain, on the record, how a person acting in self-defense stabs another human being 12 times and then caves in their skull with a frying pan. There is no good answer to that question, and Gamut knew it. She said nothing. I don't have anything for you.
What do you want? What's your pleasure? What do you want from me?
And you're gonna shut your mouth or I'm gonna add some duct tape for you.
If you don't let me out of here, I'm gonna kill you.
You wanna take my kids from me and act like that? You in there?
You wanna be in the room or not?
Do you want to stop?
The tension was only beginning to build, because next, the victim's aunt, Diana Banks Joyner, was given the opportunity to address the court. This is called a victim impact statement. In plain English, it is the moment when the people who have been directly harmed by a crime can tell the judge and the defendant exactly what that crime has cost them. It is often the most emotionally charged moment in any sentencing hearing. Joyner stood up and began to speak. She thanked God for the special gift that was about to be delivered to the defendant. She was referring, of course, to the sentence that was coming. And before she could finish, Gamut interrupted her. From the transcript, Gamut could be heard mocking the grieving woman.
Is that the 4 counts that you're going to plead to? Mr. Miles, we set this hearing.
Just talk again. I'll have my court officer put a piece of duct tape in your mouth. You understand it? Try it one more time and see what happens to your mouth. You got something else to say? Duct tape, in a court of law, threatened by a sitting judge against a convicted murderer who would not stop talking. The audacity of the threat tells you exactly how far past the breaking point this defendant had pushed everyone in that courtroom. But Gamut did not stop. She fired back. I'm done. Miss, get the duct tape. Now sit here and listen to the lies. You know what? She's got a right to talk to the court after you murder a relative of hers. And the judge responded again, matching her defiance with absolute authority.
Mr. Miles, is that your understanding? Is that the 4 counts that you're going to plead to? Mr. Miles, we set.
And you're going to shut your mouth, or I'm going to have some duct tape put on. This is where we need to pause and understand what is really happening here. Judge McBain is not actually going to duct tape a defendant's mouth in court. What he is doing is something far more interesting from a legal ethics perspective. He is using the threat of immediate physical consequence to re-establish order in a courtroom that has spiraled completely out of his control. Whether that is appropriate judicial conduct is a question we will return to, but what matters right now is that it worked. The courtroom fell silent. And then the prosecutor stood up. Now, if you thought the judge had been harsh, the prosecutor was about to deliver something even more devastating. Addressing the court, the prosecutor said, "We have no choice but to send her where she will also die. I can't believe she stands before you doing this morning." The implication was clear. Life in prison. Not just decades. Not just a long sentence. Death behind bars. The state was asking for the maximum.
Out at the judge. Like in the case of 43-year-old Alto Miles, who was facing 4 counts of aggravated murder in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Clearly a homicidal, dangerous individual.
And after what everyone had just witnessed, it was hard to imagine any other outcome. And then it was Judge McBain's turn. This is the moment the entire hearing had been building toward, the sentence. But before he delivered it, he had something to say. And what he said was not just a legal ruling, it was a condemnation. This is where the emotional climax of this case lands, so we need to slow down and let every word carry its weight.
I prefer not to, sir.
Well, you got a mouth for it.
Courtroom, man.
The court determines.
I want to take the life you run me out of here.
This is 41-year-old Juan Rodriguez, who was accused of attacking a woman with a knife in Miami, Florida. A week earlier, Rodriguez allegedly stabbed nurse Nadine Morris at a mental health facility he was residing in after accusing her of theft. Now, facing an attempt.
This is one of the worst cold-blooded murders I've seen in a long time. You end up ultimately hit him in the head so hard with a pan that you actually cave in the front of his skull, and then you stabbed him no less than 12 times. Tell you, you gutted him like a fish in that apartment too. You were relentless. You stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed until he was dead. Notice the repetition there. You stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed, you stabbed. That is not accidental. That is a judge using language as a weapon, making sure that every single wound is accounted for in the public record, forcing the defendant to hear what she did, one stab at a time.
Then, things got really crazy.
Mr. Miles, I'm going to ask this question again.
Judge Wagner gave Miles one last chance, but in return, all he got was a disturbing.
And then he delivered the line that will follow Kamiya Gamut for the rest of her life. I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting a chair. Let that sink in. A sitting judge in an American courtroom said he hoped a defendant died in prison. He said that if the law allowed it, she would be facing execution. This is not standard judicial language. This is not the dispassionate, measured tone we expect from the bench. This is raw. This is personal. And the question we need to ask is whether it crossed a line. From a legal ethics standpoint, the issue here is judicial temperament. Judges are expected to maintain impartiality, even when they feel strongly about a case. The American Bar Association's Model Code of Judicial Conduct requires judges to be patient, dignified, and courteous to all persons. Threatening duct tape is arguably none of those things. Telling a defendant you hope they die in prison is certainly none of those things. But here is the counter-argument, and it is one worth considering. Judicial temperament is not the same thing as judicial passivity. A judge who sits silently while a convicted murderer mocks the victim's family is not being impartial, he is being complicit. Sometimes the most dignified thing a judge can do is to name evil for what it is, to stand with the victims, and to make absolutely clear that the court sees what happened and will not pretend otherwise. Where you come down on that question says a lot about what you think courts are actually for. Are they sterile chambers of pure procedure, or are they places where justice is not just done, but felt? There is no single right answer, and that is precisely the point. After Judge McBain finished speaking, he imposed the sentence: life in prison, no possibility of parole. Kamiya Gamut will never leave prison. She will spend the rest of her natural life inside a cell, and when she dies, it will be there. The judge got exactly what he hoped for. But there is a broader lesson here, and it is one that every person watching this needs to understand before they ever walk into a courtroom. What happened to Kamiya Gamut was not just the consequence of a brutal murder. It was the consequence of what she did after she was convicted. The sentencing hearing is not a trial. It is not a chance to re-argue your case. It is a single, narrow opportunity to show the judge that you are something more than the worst thing you have ever done. And if you use that opportunity to mock the victim's family, to insult the process, to show zero remorse, the judge will notice. The judge will remember, and the judge will act accordingly. The right of allocution is a double-edged sword. It can help a defendant who uses it genuinely, but for someone like Kamiya Gamut, who used it to double down on her lies and attack the very people she had already harmed. It became the rope she used to hang herself. Every word she spoke in that courtroom after the guilty verdict made her sentence worse. Not legally worse, the law prescribed life in prison regardless, but existentially worse. She went from a defendant receiving a sentence to a person being condemned, and the difference is entirely in how she chose to behave when the spotlight was on her. If you ever find yourself in a courtroom, as a defendant, as a witness, as a victim, remember this hearing. Remember that every word you speak is being measured, every interruption is being noted, every moment of defiance or disrespect is being silently added to the ledger. And when the judge finally speaks, all of it comes due. Judge McBain has since retired from the bench. His comments in this case remain controversial among legal ethicists. Some say he went too far. Others say he did exactly what justice required. What cannot be disputed is that on that day, in that courtroom in Jackson, Mississippi, a judge looked at a remorseless killer and told her exactly what the world thought of her. And then he made sure she would never be free again. The duct tape never came out, but the sentence did. And that sentence will outlast everyone who heard it spoken.